It's time. It's time to open your eyes. It's time to open your mind. It's time to grow up and face reality. It's time to lock and load because it's MeatTrapper time. Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 240 of MeatTrapper Radio. I hope each and every one of you have managed to stay warm and managed to keep the power on during this time, because a lot of people out there are having some severe issues, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot tonight. We've got a lot on the plate here, and I think it'll be a good episode. But a couple of announcements. Number one, I want to let everybody know that the Walk with the Wild Man book is back in stock, and it's available on my website. You can go to MeatTrapper.com and click on the poaching manual menu item, and it'll take you right there. This is an excellent book. It's a very high quality book as far as the way it's put together, the quality of materials and workmanship on the book. And this book is self-published. As a matter of fact, you can go to the website, MeatTrapper.com, and you can listen to a sample chapter. And Wild Man is he's an older gentleman, and he has spent a lifetime of putting food on his table his way. The thing I like about the book is that the chapters are relatively short. You can have chapters that are 2, 3, maybe 10 pages, and each chapter is a story. And the stories are not only entertaining, but they're educational. Each chapter and each story that he tells, there's little nuggets of information on everything from what type of hooks that he uses to how he gets in and out of places to what type of shotgun shells and just everything you can think of, and it covers every type of game out there. He is very private, and so this book has to be published, self-published, because of the content in it. No publisher will touch it. Believe me, no publisher will do this. So he has to pay up front in cash to have the book published. Then the books have to be shipped to me, which of course that takes time and money, and then I put the books up for sale. So we have to support those who support us, and you have to support what you want, or else it goes away. Hopefully it won't be too much longer this spring, and Walk with the Wild Man Part 2 will be out. He's got the stories assembled. And basically, since he's not a computer guy, it all has to be typed up and typeset and made printer ready and all that kind of stuff. So it's a large undertaking, definitely. But you can get your copy at MeatTrapper.com if you don't already have one, and it's a great book. Highly recommend it. I also want to thank our sponsor, Mr. Brian McKee of SouthernSnares.com. Brian is continuing to recover and get his strength back after suffering a heart attack, and they are working through the back orders and trying to answer the phone and update the website, and it's just a lot of work, So we wish him the best, and we certainly thank him for his support throughout the years here at MeatTrapper Radio. So anyway, now I'd mentioned the cold weather, and this is something that I want to go back to, because a couple of episodes ago, well, it's probably more than a couple of episodes ago, I did an episode on the solar minimum, grand solar minimum, or what's also known as a Maunder minimum. And I went into detail about what a Maunder minimum is. Basically, it's when the sun goes into a period of low sunspots, And this is an 11-year cycle that the sun goes through with sunspots, and it affects radio propagation, shortwave radio propagation, all this sort of thing. But there are larger cycles, and this is what the Maunder minimum is. You can go back through history and you can see the ice ages, and even little ice ages that we've had, and there's a lot of correlation between the two. Now, the funny thing is when I mentioned the possibility that we were entering a Maunder minimum, there were a lot of people that kind of poo-pooed that idea, and so that's, but that's, and that's fine. But there is no disputing the fact that we've had a huge winter storm that has moved into the Midwest and central parts of the country. And what we're seeing now is that huge areas have lost power, and that people are extremely unprepared. Specifically in Texas, down around the Austin, Texas area, Houston, Texas area, we're seeing a lot of suffering there. And what's happened is the power grid has been overloaded, and it's for a variety of reasons. Now, it's easy to blame one single thing, but really it's more than any one single thing that's going on. Number one, the green energy stuff simply can't handle this type of weather. I mean, we have wind turbines down there, and you got to put wind turbines in to be green, and they've frozen up. They've got ice on their blades, and so you actually have helicopters that were having to fly up there and spray de-icing chemicals on the wind turbine blades to try and de-ice them. And the irony of having to burn fossil fuels to de-ice green energy machines, that irony is just lost on your communists that dictate this sort of thing. You've also had a lot of things like solar panels that are covered in snow. And of course, in wintertime, the efficiency of solar panels goes way down because of the lack of sunlight. And then when they get snow and ice on them, they really don't work very well at all, which is kind of common sense. But then the big thing really is a lot of the natural gas wellheads have frozen up. They're not pumping natural gas. Now, this is one thing that you'll see coming out of the liberals is, it's not the green energy that was the problem, it was the natural gas wells froze. And that's kind of sort of true, but what they're doing is they're lying by omission, because you see, a natural gas well requires a compressor in order to pump the gas out, and you have compressors that can be powered by natural gas, which makes sense because that's what is right there and we have an unlimited supply of. But no, you see, the liberals had to make sure that the compressors that were put in these areas were powered by electricity. It's their monkeying with energy policies, and they're trying to be green and politically correct that is ultimately responsible for this. So people have been without power for days in temperatures that were, basically zero, and that's terrible stuff. It really is. And then you have a whole slew of associated problems when the power goes out, because then what happens is you have pipes bursting, and so water is flowing everywhere, and then the water freezes up. And you see pictures on the internet now of people's ceiling fans in their living room with icicles hanging off the ceiling fans because the pipes burst in the apartment above them and came through the roof and was running down the ceiling fan, and it's so cold in the apartment that the water freezes solid. I mean, it's just horrible stuff. You've got water treatment plants that were without electricity, and so now the water's not getting treated. And even if you do have running water, a lot of these places are under boil orders. So you're supposed to boil the water before you can drink it. But if you don't have any power, then how do you boil water? Because none of these people are prepped. None of them have Coleman stoves. None of them have kerosene heaters. None of them were prepared for any of this. And you're really seeing people getting what they deserve good and hard. And I know that may sound harsh, but that's the truth. You're dealing, the one thing that they have down there is they've got a lot of illegals and they've got their open borders back, but they don't have any electricity or water. And it's really turning into a third world situation down there. And once the weather warms up again next week and these, all of these burst pipes start flowing again, you're gonna have a mess. You're gonna have a mess. You're gonna have sheetrock ruined. You're gonna have mold. You're gonna have mildew. And none of these people seem to be learning any of the lessons of life. You've got people that are so desperate down there, they're burning crayons. They're trying to burn their kids' crayons as candles for heat in their home. You've got people sleeping in their idling vehicles. You have people standing in line for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards out in the snow and the ice trying to get into a grocery store where they're only allowed to buy 15 items at a time because they didn't have enough food in their house to last 3 days. I mean, you hear all the time about people don't have enough money in the bank to cover a $400 emergency, and these people don't have enough food stored up or enough food in their pantry to last three or 4 days without having to go to the store to buy a can of Beanie Weenies or something. And then you have people that can't use their credit cards because some of the payment processors were located in areas that lost power. So you can be walking into a store in Kansas or somewhere that's not in the affected area, and you can't use your credit card because the processing center is down because it's without power. And of course, nobody has cash. And how many times have I said, have cash on hand? But look at who you're dealing with. I just in the very previous episode, just from last week, I did an entire thing about how stupid the average American has become, where they're gluing their hair to their head. They're gluing cups to their face and videotaping themselves doing it. I mean, if you're that stupid, do you really think they're going to be prepared? Do you really think these people are going to take money and instead of buying big screen TVs and muscle cars on credit, that they're going to buy a kerosene stove or they're going to buy a lantern of some sort, or they're going to buy some extra canned goods to stock up just in case? And the sad thing is I guarantee you they're not going to learn from this. As soon as the power comes back on, as soon as the water gets restored, and as soon as the mess gets cleaned up, they're going to go right back to their former lifestyle. These people are not able to be helped. That's how I feel about it. It is sad, but true. Now, when we look at the response of the authorities, it should tell these people, these liberals, everything they need to know, because basically nothing is being done about any of this. The incompetence is astounding. You had that giant traffic pileup. Do you remember that big interstate pileup that was in Fort Worth where I think it was 70, 75 vehicles, 100 vehicles piled into each other on the interstate. 6 people were died, dozens were injured, and it was horrible. You can see the videos of 18-wheelers just unable to stop, hitting the ice on the interstate and just plowing in. and just running over other cars. And the thing is we actually have a tribe member who is a long-haul trucker, and he went down that interstate about 20 minutes before that pileup occurred, and he told me that it was very, very dicey at the time. And of course, the local authorities had done nothing. They hadn't put any sand down, and they're not going to have ice and salt and everything like they do up north. They're not prepared for it. But they didn't even put sand down. They did nothing. And so you've got more and more an overpowering, authoritative, dictatorial government that's going to dictate that you have a mask on, that's going to dictate that you stand on an X taped on the floor, that's going to dictate whether or not your business can open. But when it comes to performing the duty of government itself, and that's safeguarding the citizens, they do absolutely nothing. And of course, people are going to vote them right back into office, and nothing will happen. And it was funny because on Facebook, my local congressman, Congressman Mark Green, who is he is a former U.S. Army doctor. He was deployed to Iraq. Blah-bitty blah, blah-bitty blah, Mr. Big Conservative guy. There was a rocket attack on a U.S. base in Kurdistan, and some U.S. soldiers were injured. And he posted on Facebook he was outraged at this attack. And so I sort of left him a message, and I basically said, this is just another meaningless war, and it's fought not to win, but to enrich defense contractors in the military-industrial complex. And I said, if we're serious about winning this war, or any of these wars that we're in, we need to first be able to define what winning actually is. Then we need to reinstate the draft. We need to put the country on a war footing. Congress, of which you're a member of, Mr. Congressman, Congress needs to actually have a declaration of war and vote on it, like the Constitution actually says. And then we need to actually fight the war to win it. But of course, none of this will happen, and none of our so-called conservative congressmen, like Congressman Green here, will ever utter a peep about any of this stuff, because they're all a sham. They're all liars. They're all hypocrites. So we end up with these 20-year-long meat grinder conflicts that kill and maim thousands of Americans and millions of foreigners, that puts our country deeper and deeper into debt and makes defense contractors rich, while the American people here are sitting in a freezing apartment with no electricity and no running water. And their school systems suck. And their roads are full of potholes. They've got better roads in China than we have in the United States. They've got better subways in China than we have in the United States. They've got better trains in China than we have in the United States. But that's the situation. And what you need to do is you need to pay attention to the unintended consequences of these electrical grid failures, because it can happen not only in winter, but it can happen in summer. And in my opinion, it's going to happen more and more going forward. This is the opening round. We have a tribe member here that's not even in the affected area. And his factory, where he works at, had to shut down because of a lack of electricity, because the grids are all tied together. And so he's out of work and unable to earn a paycheck because of the grid being down in another state. It's sort of like dominoes. You kick over one domino, you flick over one domino, and it knocks them all down. We have crop failures now. We've got citrus crop failures. We've got, I think it was 75% of the hard red winter wheat crop has been impacted by this. You've got dairy farmers that are having to pour milk out onto the ground again because the processing plants in the area have no power. And you can't just keep raw milk hanging around. It's got to be processed. You've got cattle ranchers that are suffering because they've got to get their they've got to have power to operate. Just as simple stuff like trying to get equipment out of a barn. You've got big overhead doors that are operated by electricity. And so when the electricity goes down, they can't get their equipment out. You've got grain elevators that can't accept grain shipments. And a lot of our meat production is done by what I call factory farming. And that is, they're raising cows and they're raising pigs and they're raising chickens, but it's almost like a factory. And those places require power. And without power, they can't operate. So it's just a mess. You see, it's a cascading effect. And most people understand cascading failures on a power grid, but you've got to understand the cascading effect on the supply chain and on the food supply, all the way down to trying to get into the grocery store. And that's why I sound like a broken record week after week, month after month, year after year. You have to be prepared. So now that I've had my rant about the current situation, the next thing I want to talk about, and this is a subject that I'd like to get everyone's feedback on, because I think everybody has an opinion on this subject, and I certainly have mine. I know that's a surprise to everyone, but the subject is price gouging. And I think this is interesting because you can have people that are very liberal and very conservative, but the price gouging argument tends to cross all barriers. It tends to cross all political barriers, all social and economic barriers, and all racial barriers. And you come down on one of either two sides, and that is either you're against price gouging, or you don't think there is such a thing as price gouging. And for the record, I have no problem with price gouging, none whatsoever. And I'm going to explain why. And that's basically because I believe in capitalism, and I believe in supply and demand. Now, of course, no system is perfect. There is always room to abuse any system. But the reason I bring this up is Twitter during this whole cold snap was exploding with complaints of quote-unquote price gouging. For instance, in Austin, Texas, there were hotels who had power, therefore they had heat and running water, and the hotel rooms were going from anywhere from $400 to $1,500 a night, and people were outraged. A hotel that was normally $40 a night was now $400 a night, and a hotel that was normally $150 a night was now $1,500 a night. And there was just a complete outrage about this. And I have no problem whatsoever with people raising the price during these times, because you see, once you institute price controls, you guarantee shortages. Now, I'm not speaking to this from a theoretical perspective. In my lifetime, I have lived through 4 major hurricanes. Some of them quite long ago. 1979 was my first that I remember. I went through Camille in '69, but I was just a little boy. Don't have that much in the way of memories. But Frederick in '79 was a devastating hurricane. I lived through that, and that's really what got me started on prepping. I've done episodes on that in the past, so I'm coming from this through personal experience of being on the receiving end, and basically one of the things you notice after a hurricane is ice and gasoline are two things that really go up in price because they're extremely scarce in the devastated area. The gasoline has to be brought in, the ice has to be brought in, And, of course, the price skyrockets. And people get all upset. You know, you're charging $20 for a bag of ice, and normally it's $2 for the bag of ice. That's price gouging. There ought to be a law against it. You ought to put people in jail. Well, you know what happens is if you force people to sell ice for $2 a bag after a hurricane, there's not going to be any ice because of two things. Number one, if I live 100 miles outside of the devastated area, why would I go and buy a bunch of ice and buy a bunch of coolers or some freezers, put them on a flatbed truck, buy all the gasoline, and drive into the affected area and be chainsawing my way through roads and all of that to sell ice for $2 a bag and lose money? I wouldn't. But if I could sell it for $20 a bag and make a profit in addition to covering all of my transportation expenses, then I would be willing to do it. And so if you're in the affected area, yeah, it sucks to pay $20 for a bag of ice. But you know what? If you've got to have that ice for, say, medication, or some other, need that you actually need that ice, you can at least get it at $20. Whereas if it's at $2, you're not going to get it. And if you have to have medication that stays refrigerated, you're just SOL. So your choice is pay $20 and get what you need, or pay $2 and not be able to get it at all. It really is that simple. And that's why I am against price controls, because it guarantees shortages. Let's look at another example. Look at ammo prices. Everybody listening to this knows exactly what's happened with ammo prices in this country. They're through the roof. Now, if you get on ammoseek.com or you look at some of the other websites, right now I can buy .243 and .30-30 ammo, which are two of the rifle calibers that I shoot, for $4 a round, which is... it's unbelievably expensive. Never in my life would I have imagined a .30-30 round going for $4 a pop. And people say, "Oh, that's price gouging." Well, you know what? If you could buy .30-30 rounds for 50 cents a piece or $1 a piece, there wouldn't be any available. Because the first time they went up for sale, somebody would buy all 1,000 rounds available off of a vendor's website or out of a store. They would clean the store shelves out. And even if you put a limit, they always try and put limit 3 boxes. Doesn't matter. People come right back around and clean it out. Price is the only way to control that mechanism. And even at $4 a round, let's say you buy a 20-round box of .243 shells, which my deer rifle is a Winchester Model 70 and .243. Talked about it a lot, love it to death. And I can't remember the last time I lost a deer after putting a 95-grain Nosler petition into, or a ballistic tip is what I shoot, Nosler ballistic tip, into a deer out of that .243. So let's say I buy a box of shells, a 20-round box. That's going to cost me $80 right now if I buy it at market prices. And people say, that's insane. Well, with that 20-round box of shells, I can kill 20 deer for $80. So let's translate this. What if I could go to the store? What if I could go to the butcher shop and they had a deer hanging there that was skinned and gutted, and it had a price tag on that deer that said $4? Would you buy it? I would. If I could walk down to the store, drive my truck down there, and they had a deer hanging up, and it had $4 on it, that's a bargain. So you see, if you put a price control on the ammunition and you limited the price, and the supply evaporates because nobody's going to make it or sell it at such a low price when the cost of raw materials and commodities is going through the roof, you won't have any ammo. So your choice is a $4 deer or no deer. So anyway, I think that's an interesting subject, and I get it a lot. Is that's price gouging. You know, nobody's putting a gun to your head and making you buy it if you think it's too expensive. You can just do without. And speaking of too expensive, I can't remember if I mentioned this last episode or not, but I bought a half a beef cow from a fellow Patreon member, a fellow tribe member here in Tennessee. And he took it to a local slaughterhouse here in Tennessee, and they butchered it, cut it up, wrapped it up, and you have a cut sheet that you fill out, and basically you can specify, which cuts that you want, what you want ground up, how thick you want your steak sliced, and all that kind of stuff. And they cut it to order, and then vacuum pack it and freeze it and everything. And what was interesting is the butcher bill. And this is the slaughterhouse bill, the butchering and the packaging for my half beef came to $179. Now, when you take a deer to the deer processor, they charge you $100 to process a deer, depending upon, the size of the deer and all of that. And you don't really know if you're getting all of your meat back or if you're even getting the meat that you took in. You have no way of knowing all of that. And it's just, to me, dealing with a professional slaughterhouse versus these guys that moonlight as deer processors, it shows you just what a ripoff a deer processor can be. And that's just another skill that you need to have, is to be able to process your own game, because you can save a lot of money. And you know that you're getting what you brought in. So anyway, if you are a Patreon member, stay tuned, because we've got a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk about a canoe selection. We're going to talk about the semiconductor shortage that's going on, and we've got a lot to go on. And finally, we're going to end the episode with talking about getting back to your purpose for being alive, your purpose for life. Because, the last episode I talked about the fact that most people have nothing to live for. They're aimless, and that's why they're miserable. So we're going to get into all of that and get into some philosophical discussions. So anyway, if you're a Patreon member, stay tuned. If you're not, I'd like to urge you to consider becoming one. You can go to patreon.com/MeatTrapper, get all signed up, get access to over 230 back episodes, plus almost 80 bonus episodes and movies and books and all kind of good stuff like that. But the main thing is you can become part of the tribe. And I'm also going to talk about a potential Telegram channel on the back end of tonight's show. So stay tuned.